everybody. Welcome to today's webinar. I'm so happy to be here. I'm Audrey. I'm a senior content analyst with CCW Digital and really excited for this conversation today, talking with our friends at Ushur about AI agents, building AI agents to complete customer journeys, everything that entails, and some of the obstacles and key learnings to consider in embarking on that journey. So really delighted to be joined today by Sima Sadasiva, the co-founder and CEO at Ushur. Happy to have you here with us today. And yeah, I think I wanted to start off our conversation just by setting the scene with what we're calling the completion gap. So we have a few statistics from CCW Digital that we thought were really pertinent and relevant to the conversation around how AI agents are actually operating in practice today. So just starting off here, 45% of customers believe that experiences have improved in the past year. Obviously, that's less than half, not the most encouraging figure. It is one we talk about a lot at CCW Digital because we think it's really important to recognize, like at a very basic level, customers are not the most satisfied or as satisfied as they could be with the state of CX. At the same time, only a quarter believe that the technology that is being used is actually improving their experiences as customers. So even less confidence in the technology. And then, kind of on the more optimistic side, 64% of customers believe AI has the potential to positively transform experiences. So when you kind of put these ingredients together, what we're seeing is this big gap between what customers are looking for, the lack of satisfaction they're feeling from experiences, and then also, the intent and all of the kind of the goals that organizations and brands are putting forward. They're trying to use technology to improve experiences, but they're not always seeing those results. So today we're going to dive into why that is, maybe some ways that we can remediate that and kind of look at things a little bit differently. And throughout the conversation, would love to hear from anything that you all would like to hear more about. So any questions you have about the technology we talk about, any of the best practices, please feel free to put in the chat throughout the event, anything you'd like to know. And we definitely will have time to get to those towards the end of the conversation. So without further ado, would love to just kind of have Sima set the scene for us a little bit more. So from your perspective, despite years of investment in digital engagement and automation and all of those things, customers are just not seeing these results, as I said. So what do you think is creating that disconnect or really contributing to that completion gap, so to speak?
First off, thank you for having me, Audrey. It's great to be here. Good morning and good afternoon to all the people who are joining us today. Um, Delighted to share my journey and experiences here in terms of what we've been building at Ushur, as well as what we're seeing in the marketplace. Um, Look, there's a lot of evolution that we are seeing in terms of the transformation itself. And if you look at the big picture, I think the world transformed into um, SaaS a little over 2 decades ago. And in the last 20 years, we've seen a lot of the transformation. Still, with all of those technologies, we still left behind what I call silos. Those silos between the front office, the middle office, and the back office. And those silos have now continued to demonstrate the gaps, even with the advent of breakthrough technologies, specifically these large language models that have given us so much more reasoning capability. The business process silos that we have established, and that legacy of existing infrastructure that continues to solve for just the point problems because of those silos, I think they are probably what attributes to the lack of success that end customers typically see, right? The gap that they see, even though some partial experiences are getting really better, they're still partial experiences. And for an average customer, the experience needs to be as seamless as going to an ATM, right? And if that doesn't complete that journey end to end, and you have to go off to talk to another human agent or talk to a different platform, that break in the continuous experience is what contributes to friction. And that's very, very evident in all the conversations that we have with our customers today in terms of what they are experiencing. And so I do think that there's a lot of promise with um, what we can do to solve for those silos. But that's probably what I would attribute to the point problems that we have solved for over the last couple of decades. The fact that the solutions are assembled to solve for those point problems, and they don't really speak to the continuum of what a customer experience needs to be. And we can talk at length. It's a big topic, and I'm happy to share a little more detail in terms of what we are seeing.
Yeah, no, thank you. I think that's a great example of the ATM as kind of um, an end-to-end experience. And I think I like how you brought up the incomplete nature, because I think when it comes to incompleteness, you tend to think of maybe something not going right, but a lot of the time it is right. It's just not everything that you're looking for. And yeah, that kind of brings up another thought. Obviously, we've seen AI get a lot better at answering questions and engaging folks in natural language, and it kind of creates the facade almost that it's a complete experience because it's like conversing with you and everything. But I guess, how would you characterize the difference between what is a fundamentally what is fundamentally different about conversational AI that can understand and respond very intelligently versus AI agent that actually completes the experience end to end?
Again, goes back to the we have to talk about the shift in technology, the shift in the capabilities, and probably we'll bring in some key concepts here to communicate here, right? Um, the front office, middle office, back office. That's the uh, analog that we need to double click on. Conversational systems were really good at that front office piece. When you need to have a conversation, I think with even the previous generation of language models, not necessarily the large language models, the previous generation of small and medium sized models that handled your basic natural language processing, natural language understanding, were really good at, or rather, were good enough to drive those conversations. That's why you saw a category emerge, a category called conversational AI emerge, right? But that only solved for the front office piece. um, the middle office, back office, that has been a 2-decade journey, right? I mean, if you really double click on that, business process management solutions or BPM solutions, workflow solutions, they've been, the 10, 15 years of evolution of that category. And then RPA came in to stitch some of the uh, road uh, knowledge work that was repeatedly being done in the middle office or the back office. Now, there are still silos. The conversational AI only address the front office piece. The BPM RPA only address the middle office, back office piece. The amazing opportunity that we see is that with these large language models, we can now truly create these agentic experiences. And when we talk about agency or agentic solutions, they're truly built with the goal of completing tasks end to end, right? And we see a lot of agentic AI applications. And when we talk about AI agents, they're designed to run to completion, take tasks, take work, and run to completion. So we see a lot of different types of agentic AI capability set. Not all AI agents are built the same way. They are not necessarily catering to the same business problems. But our focus at Usher is to take the business problem of customer experience, customer engagement, and make sure that we can solve that end to end. So, to solve that end to end, we have to break through these silos of front office, middle office, back office. And so when a customer experience or a customer journey does not just necessarily terminate in the front office, and it requires some knowledge work or business process that needs to intercept that customer journey and cater to it. We don't want that to be stuck in that middle office or the back office. So an AI agent that is truly catering to the end-to-end customer experience needs to be able to engage, communicate effectively using a variety of channels. It needs to be able to do the knowledge work in the middle, that is typically what would belong in the business process management or the RPA world, and then eventually right back into systems of record seamlessly. So that's the lens that we see. And so for us, at Asher, we think about this as a system of intelligence that focuses on completing this customer experience automation end to end.
Thank you. Yeah, no, I think definitely a lot to think about there. And I liked how you broke out the steps that we had up, because I think, yeah, what you were explaining about how we talk a lot about silos and CX and how data is kind of trapped in certain places and then can't be accessed by different teams. And that's obviously like an ongoing challenge across customer experience design. But I think, the way you broke it out was especially insightful because I don't think we always think of end-to-end completion in that way, and I feel like there is something to be said about how easy it is and how much it doesn't actually require, reorienting your entire org structure around that, if I'm hearing that correctly.
That's exactly right. I see you have put up a poll here.
Yeah. Yeah, so we would love to hear, just, quick poll, because we're always curious about, channel preferences. We do a lot of work in that, but I think it's really interesting to see from other folks, what is your kind of approach to self-service and, how much you can really rely on different sort of ways to get customers into the journey, how you use that. So yeah, feel free to vote in that poll. That would be really helpful for us to kind of, come back to as this conversation progresses, to talk more about, adapting in one direction or the other. But as those trickle in, I would also love to ask, what is the human role in, this sort of end-to-end journey completion that's being done by AI agents? So, Simo, like, what do you see as the responsibilities of the humans in the loop? Where do they sit? Where can they provide the most value? And is it a question of just keeping humans in the loop, or is there maybe also a component of with these AI flows being dominated by AI, are there new kind of opportunities for the human to provide value?
Look, I don't subscribe to this belief that everything will be automated, so we don't need humans, right? I think that's a it probably is a talking point so you can get some attention from people, but that's just we've been seeing these technology trends and shifts for multiple decades, and with the advent of every technology, there is this mass hysteria that some of these transformations will disrupt and totally change the world. It is changing the world in profound ways, but I'm of the belief that humans will always be relevant and useful if we can deploy our capabilities towards the things that make us really the most most dominant species on the planet, right? So for repetitive things that are really little to no value, deploying humans is more friction, I would say. And these are the kinds of things that we see having the potential to totally automate, right? And where there is a requirement to bring cognitive capabilities, empathy, to solve for complexity, those are the opportunities that I see humans do incredibly well, right? And so I know this audience is probably across various different verticals. Usher, as a business, has really started our journey. The first decade of our existence was largely focused on regulated industries. Um, and as we have built this new agentic capability set, we believe that some of those learnings that we have brought in from regulated industries are relevant and helpful and useful. So my point of view is that the first contact, whether it is an insurance claim that gets lodged, whether it is a service request, a ticket. I think if humans were just doing the task of being routers, those kinds of those kinds of work will be first to get automated. Where there is complexity to really solve for the problem that the end customer is asking for, where there's multiple layers of complexity that is involved, I think those are the ones that I feel that will probably either take a longer time in terms of the transformation journey, or they will not get automated. There are lots of regulatory burden because of which AI can touch certain experiences. In the world of healthcare, for example, we have a lot of experience in this space because of regulatory requirements. We cannot automate everything. Claim adjudication is an area where uh, very specific governing bodies like state governments are imposing that claims cannot be totally automated by AI. That's just one example. And even in talking to many of our customers, when it comes to clinical advice or information that touches the clinical aspects of a patient engagement, I think are less likely to get automated. But I do see the opportunity for the first contact, low value, repetitive uh, use cases to get automated through agentic AI, and through even business process automation can help automate some of those first contact journeys.
Yeah, thank you. Um, that is definitely eye-opening. I think there is a few, yeah, there's a couple of things there. Obviously there is kind of this human touch that we talk about a lot in CX. Usually referring to the more sensitive cases or things that require empathy or critical thinking, like you said. But I also think the expertise component is important to mention too. Obviously, there's a ton of information that can be accessed very easily and helpfully through self-service and sort of any sort of digital channel. But kind of having that second piece there is super important. Um, and just before we move forward, I wanted to take a quick look at the poll results just to kind of close the loop there. Um, we, sorry, we see that we have 64% on the side of customers preferring to start in self-service, which honestly is not super surprising to me. I think, especially with examples like the ATM and things that we don't tend to think of as self-service because they're not like the high-tech new digital thing. People do like the frictionless experience of that self-service. So I don't know, Sima, if you're surprised by that. I'm sure you're probably not, but yeah, interesting feedback.
I think there's a false notion that this cuts through demographics, right? Like elderly people would still probably go into the bank instead of going to an ATM. Those are no longer relevant, if you ask me, especially with digital mobile experiences, because the average 65-70 year old, this notion that they don't text or they don't necessarily use mobile or digital technologies is an incorrect assumption. We are seeing that the fastest growing demographic in terms of the age group is the 60 to 75 age group for texting and mobile adoption, largely because that cohort is intending to, again, this is just the research that we are seeing, is the cohort wanting to connect with nephews, nieces, grandkids. So the adoption of mobile and mobile first experiences in that demographic is rapidly rising. So I do think that there is still a channel preference. Some people like to talk versus preferring to text. And so over the next 4 or 5 years, we see that the technology is democratizing the experiences irrespective of the channel that you choose to engage in. For example, I think it's not that people love to call in into call centers, right? I don't think that's that's a false narrative. If you ask me, people generally like to talk as opposed to text. It's harder for you to text long uh, long pieces of information that you want to communicate, and texting is also not the most natural way to engage and communicate. Even though it's asynchronous, it provides you the convenience of not being attached to a connected form of engagement. So there's lots of advantages that you get with that asynchronous interaction. um, if you can bring voice into such a experience, I'm pretty sure that people would still prefer to say something and send that as a voice message as opposed to texting. So I do think that the large language models are evolving so quickly, so fast, that we can now look at all of these channels of engagement, whether it is digital, mobile, texting, SMS, voice calls. They can all be fused in to deliver the same end-to-end experience within the limitations of what each of those channels can represent. For example, if you need to um, if you need to fill a form, right? Um, you can't do all of that over a voice channel, right? Even though you can communicate parts of the information that is required to complete that form, there is still a requirement to put some digital experience in front of the customer, right? So I see opportunities where some of these channels will need to intermingle or work together with each other. And I feel those opportunities to fuse in multi channel experiences so that the end customer can opt in or prefer, no matter what channel they choose, they're able to get the work done seamlessly. And being able to switch between those channels, that's a very big seismic shift that we think these large language models can bring in.
Totally, very well said. And yeah, I completely agree. I think it feels like the sort of next iteration of omni-channel isn't just the existence and the accessibility of all the channels. It is, like you said, the seamless ability to switch between them, kind of make the most of what they offer that you value, whether it's listening or seeing. Yeah, I think we have an example of that. Thinking about everything we've talked about so far, but also putting a practical application together. I believe you have an example of what this looks like in practice that we can pull up.
Yeah, I believe so.
Please listen carefully as our menu options have changed. Say, change my doctor, or transportation, or check eligibility. If you're not sure what you need, just tell me what you're trying to do, and I'll help guide you to the right place.
Hi, I'm looking to book a ride.
I can help you book a ride. For a faster and easier experience, I can send you a secure chat link by text message so you can provide details on your phone while we talk. You'll be interacting on both voice and chat at the same time. It's not a choice between channels. Would you like me to send the secure link to the phone number ending in 8277? Or would you prefer to continue on this call?
Yes, that would be great. If I can get a secure chat link?
I sent a secure chat link to your phone number ending in 8277. When you're ready, tap the link in your text messages to open the chat. Great, you're now connected on chat and voice. I'll help you book your ride. Welcome, Amanda. Let's get started with booking your ride. Is this ride for you or for someone else?
Yes, this ride is for me.
Thanks for letting me know. Can you walk, or do you need special assistance for your ride?
Can I get some wheelchair assistance?
Thanks for letting me know you need wheelchair assistance. Is this appointment something that happens regularly, like every week or month, or is it just a one-time visit? Your pickup address is 1227 West Linden Street, Riverside, California, 92507. Is this correct, or do you need to update it?
Yes, that's the correct address.
Thanks for confirming your pickup address. What type of appointment is this for? You can choose from behavioral health, chemotherapy, dialysis, or dental. You chose dialysis. Your destination is Riverside Community Hospital at 3838 Sherman Drive, Riverside, California, 92503. What date is your appointment?
My appointment is on April 30th.
Great, your appointment is on April 35th. What time is your appointment? Thanks. Your appointment is at 10 a.m. Your current drop-off address is 38038 Sherman Drive, Riverside, California, 92503. Is this the correct destination, or do you need to update it?
Yes, that's the correct destination.
Your ride is all set, Amanda. We'll pick you up at 1227 West Linden Street, Riverside, California, 92507, and take you to Riverside Community Hospital at 3838 Sherman Drive, Riverside, California, 92503, for your dialysis appointment on April 30th at 10 a.m. Your confirmation number is IHW73EJK. You'll get a text with these details within 24 hours. Is there anything else I can help you with today?
Yes, I'd like to check my eligibility status.
Your eligibility status is eligible. Your coverage started on February 1, 2017. Your plan is Medi-Cal, and your primary care provider is Hajara Sultana. Is there anything else I can help you with?
No, that's it. Thank you.
Very nice. Yeah, plenty of detail there, Sima. I would love to hear maybe, what is kind of just would love to hear your thoughts on what you try to achieve by building this
Yeah,
and what,
let's deconstruct that
yeah.
experience, right? So if you really look at it, I think it had many different aspects that cut through front office, middle office, back office, right? So this typically in the world of healthcare, health plans, we see this as a very big uh, challenge for many of the health plans, and the cost to support this kind of an experience is a quite onerous on care teams. B, it's also frictionful for the end customer and the patient that is experiencing this. um, so few different pieces to this. The front office piece obviously is the conversational piece where the caller called in uh, and was naturally engaging with a voice agent, right? Um, and sometimes voice and SMS are not the most privacy laden channels because they go through telco carriers and it can have multiple hops. Um, you cannot exchange a lot of what is known as health information or personally identifiable information over SMS, for example. If the caller was then redirected into a digital experience, right? um, and that was not a forced migration from one channel to another channel. Both channels were accessible and available for that caller. um, the digital channel, what we call as the invisible app, is a HIPAA secure, high trust certified container or a channel that is branded, white labeled for this Fine Health business entity. And all the brand elements are in that digital experience that is brand appropriate. But more importantly, for the customer experience, it provides a safe, secure, encrypted, and rich experience. So, for example, when the address itself was displayed, you also had a map that showed up. And if the patient needed to change the address, they could select that map and then update the address information appropriately. And you also saw the blending of the two different channels. Some inputs were spoken, the caller was speaking about specific data elements, and there were other aspects of the experience that was typed in. And so that's what I mean when I say blending of the two different experiences, two different channels. And so there are lots of use cases or applications of this technology. This demonstration was just for one specific scenario in the healthcare world that we see quite a bit now. Now, look at all the different scenarios where you could bring in um, other types of digital help, virtual help, as people are interacting, engaging, and filling out forms. You can bring in experiences that help the end customer be navigated. That's why the word usher, right? So usher is someone who ushers you where you want to get to. And so you can be ushered into the experience, ushered into the outcome that you're looking for as an end customer.
Thank you. Yeah, I really liked how rich of an experience it is, and it really feels like it resonates with the way people kind of act and expect their technology to serve them nowadays, where it's like, we know our phones have our maps, we have the calling feature, obviously, but we do so much digitally on our phones that it makes sense for our experiences to mimic, that kind of full immersive experience that we have when we're doing anything else. So I feel like that's what really stood out to me was like the richness of the experience, and it being healthcare. I feel like even, speaks even to that further, because it's like the stakes are so high. There is like a seriousness. It's may or may not be a simple issue, but the stakes are never simple.
Yeah, so what you also saw was this expectation. So look, that this is a big topic in the industry today. We were very used to the control that business had in the determination or the deterministic experiences that business wants to put in front of customers. While the other end of the spectrum, when customers come in, they want flexibility and open-ended ways in which they want to engage, because you don't quite know the intent of what every incoming customer request happens to be, right? And so I think we see this world where determinism and deterministic experiences is what the business would prefer, but customers on the other side would prefer a very flexible, non-rigid, friction-free experience, so where they can really ask anything and everything and their requests can be serviced. And this is why we feel like an agentic solution is what helps you solve for that problem. And the average agentic AI capability set that you see out there today does not solve for this problem, nor does it solve for the guardrails and governance and compliance. And so these are some of the frameworks that we have spent a lot of time thinking about in creating infrastructure that enables not just completing work but also catering to um, both the inbound and outbound nature of what customer experiences are expected of.
Yeah, that makes sense. Um, I'm sure our audience is somewhat, we see a lot of really compelling use cases and impressive pilots, and there's so much going on in the market, obviously, these days with AI. So I would like to hear from you a little bit more about what it takes to move from a successful pilot, something like this, to something that actually scales at the enterprise level.
Yeah, I call it the pilot purgatory or the POC purgatory, right? I mean, um, just because you can stand up a use case very, very quickly using your favorite frontier model or some capability set, that does not necessarily mean that you can um, go live with those solutions. So, more often than not, I have conversations with C levels where they feel like they're hitting a plateau with what they can do with some of these capability set. The bravado of oh, we can build this on our own with access to what we have with chat gpt or Claude, or take your favorite pick. I think you can build a proof of concept or a prototype grade, but to really stand up a solution, you need to think through beyond just the demonstration, right? You need to think about data sources, all the data that it needs to connect to, the orchestration of the business process itself, all the systems, the middleware that it needs to engage with and interact, the complexity of the interaction itself in the front office. Each channel requires a very uh, thoughtful approach. The latency expectations that will totally kill the voice experience, that's something that not many people understand or think about, right? The telecommunications or the TCPA burden that somebody has to worry about when they use texting as a channel of engagement, that is not something that common developer teams have awareness of. And so, to truly build a scalable end-to-end customer experience solution, you need to think about um, all of these guardrails and governance and compliance things. That is what will enable um, any internal build to be greenlit by your legal teams, your procurement teams, your compliance teams, and your business teams. So it's not for the faint-hearted. It's not. This is the reason why these transformations are taking as long as they are taking, because the the journey from being able to demonstrate a concept working to actually going live, the gaps are usually in the areas that I just talked about. Okay, and so a lot of work has gone into making these as frameworks so that you can rely on an agentic AI platform that has catered to or can support all these various different needs. So you need special purpose vehicles to deliver these kinds of experiences, these kinds of journeys.
And just kind of putting that together, trying to think about where leaders are currently at and, kind of thinking about the gap between where they are now and how they could kind of get there. What do you see as what they should be sort of organizing their measurements around? Or, what are the kind of like North Star sort of measurements and metrics or really, the business outcomes that we need to be looking at more critically to tie these initiatives to? Because I feel like this conversation, whether it's like contact center metrics or, like what is CX even measuring, it's such a big conversation. And yeah, would like to hear what you think, how that fits in.
Look, different teams have different motivations to bring automation in a world where there's continuing pressure to operationally becoming more and more efficient. Um, Especially in all the regulated industries that we work in, expense ratios and cost ratios and efficiency ratios are super important for our client base. And I am assuming that it's very much the same across the industries, across other verticals as well. So beginning with some outcomes and end goals in mind would be where we would you know coach our clients to start to look at something. It's not necessarily the volume of interactions, but it's more around, are there opportunities to really take away the pressure points for the care teams, for the contact center teams, so that they can truly focus on the ones that either can't be automated or either can't be solved through the automation capabilities that you have accessible to you today, right? So some meaningful, metrics that we typically see are obviously anything that you can demonstrate cost savings in terms of dollar value, anything that you can show that a piece of work that used to take um, x amount of time, if you can do it in a fraction of that time, that's obviously it delivers better customer experience. And in the world of claims, for example, there were situations where some claims used to take 3 to 4 weeks. Can we automate that for under a day for a vast majority of the claims that come in? If they are routinely getting approved, can we auto adjudicate certain types of claims? And so those are obviously the time to resolution for a problem is very critical in certain industries. That's something that would always move the needle. Reduction in manual work, right? So staff burden that you can remove or you take away, that obviously would be very much appreciated in certain industries. If the first call resolution is not met, it leads to an appeals or a grievance that can be filed, and those escalations that happen, and every handoff, every escalation dings the business. Customer satisfaction sometimes is a pretty important metric. A lot of companies have their executive bonuses tied to net promoter score. um, can you demonstrably improve the customer experience so that your end customers become advocates and become promoters of your business? So that's a very important metric as well. So NPS scores, CSAT scores absolutely move the needle. And anything that improves top line, I feel will obviously get funded right off the bat. If you can show any top line revenue impact by bringing in automation, can we enable a company to make more money um, through these technologies by taking away the friction, that always gets funded.
Yeah, thank you. No, I think that's I mean, I like really like how you kind of had customer satisfaction and NPS towards the end of that, because I feel like so often we think of that as like the main component for initiatives, AI agents that exist within the CX space, but there are so many ways to calculate. There's so many things to factor in to sort of determine, is this, a worthwhile cost that actually does impact the bottom line? And I don't know, I think that's like a really helpful way to break it out. And just kind of continuing that thread of thinking about, how accessible and applicable is this for, folks who aren't sort of, there yet with AI agents. So what do you see as like those first steps, or those kind of first meaningful steps towards kind of reorienting around AI agents that are able to do so much in that way?
I think I see more resistance to jump on this for two reasons. One, up until maybe even last year, I would say a lot of companies, teams were thinking that this was just another hype, a technology that was just overhyped. And there was a wait and watch approach to embracing AI. And the speed with which this technology is evolving and the rate at which businesses can totally be disrupted is causing boardrooms and conversations at the C levels to no longer take a wait and watch approach, right? So there's a lot of, in the last, I would say, 12 months or so, I have seen more companies warm up and lean into um, getting started with AI. And obviously the the first place to go was, can we deploy this for internal use cases, knowledge work that we can enable our teams to become more efficient. That was an easy call to make. A lot of companies have gone down that path. Um, Another path we have seen is we have outsourced business process teams, TPAs, BPOs that are handling some of this work. Can we automate some of that? Can we lower the cost of the business problem that we are solving? So we see a bigger push to automate some of those BPO interactions. Um, and you can get started small, right? I mean, your data integration should not, or your systems of records on the back end should not dictate whether or not you should embrace this technology. That's usually an impediment that I see. People think that they have a 30-year-old system, they need to modernize that before they can jump on the AI bandwagon, and that's a false notion. You can bring in these systems of intelligence to work alongside any legacy that you already have. These systems have the ability to not just speak APIs or connect using MCPs and all the other technologies that you have today for these agents to connect, but they can also work with simple things like flat files and CSVs and anything that you can work with today for these legacy systems. You can still enable your AI agents to also work alongside. So there are different ways to get started. It doesn't need to be you don't need to first fix your data problems, which is a narrative that you keep hearing sometimes.
Yeah, I'm so glad you brought that up. I feel like even last year that was such a dominant narrative, and I feel like we've seen, yeah, just this year so many more examples and folks kind of poking holes in that and just showing, there's so much we can do with even the most basic data that, like, you're already off to a great start if you have even that. So pretty encouraging. Um, but yeah, we have some questions from the audience that I would love to make sure we have time for. So I'll move over to those now. But if you have any like lingering thoughts, anyone, definitely feel free to put it in the chat. I think we'll have time to get to at least a few, hopefully all of them. But just starting off, we have a question about the data that supports the demographics preferences for self-service. So I know that's not super the subject of this webinar. I will say, we at CCW Digital, we cover that quite a lot. We have our annual customer preferences survey in June. So the most recent one was a couple months ago. Not super into demographics very granularly, just more about channel preferences. So that's what I have to offer. I don't know, Sima, if you have any additional perspectives from your side.
Yeah, I believe, I have a very strong thesis around this, right? I think the way we think about um, customer data, I think again, this goes back to the silos that I was talking about. You can't look at your customer preference as something that belongs in your CDP, your customer data platform, right? Um, it's not just a MDM, member data management practice, right? That should account for this. Your front office interactions that you have with your members should seamlessly percolate, and you should be able to draw insights in terms of what channels your customers are engaging with you on, what times of the day are they more likely to engage with you, how responsive are they to these interactions, whether those are call to actions that are placed by you, the business, or when they place a call to action, how fast you are responding to. So I have a very strong thesis around this. Um, Customer intelligence or a member intelligence or a claimant intelligence, these are seamlessly embedded into your agency, right? So your AI agents are able to percolate those insights better than what we were used to before. You had to literally create those business processes to extract the signals coming out of those journeys, those interactions. Not anymore, right? So I do feel like you can really build or at least learn uh, and pick up those signals based on what your customers are telling you, how they are engaging with you, and build a a database of the customer preference around channels, around times of day, around um, other types of information. And in the world of healthcare, we see a lot where we can basically tell these healthcare companies or health plans if somebody is diabetic or going through a pregnancy, then you can create these cohort of signals that allow these plans to really support the customer with appropriate and more relevant or targeted experiences that make sense for that cohort. That next best action, that member intelligence, the channel intelligence can all be seamlessly signaled from the interactions with an AI agent that they see.
Thank you. Yeah. Similarly, I know we had that great example earlier of the appointment. So a question we got is for that specific example, how many and what type of systems or databases would be required to enable that level of self-service?
Whatever is your current source of truth or systems of records that you need to have, whatever appointment or calendaring systems you use, uh, the AI agent has the ability to very seamlessly interact, integrate into, and work alongside that. Um, it's not very difficult or very hard to marry this to any existing system of record. The easiest one, Calendly and all the Exchange, Microsoft Exchange, or any of those systems are pretty run of the mill in terms of integration for a very seamless end-to-end appointment scheduling use case.
Awesome. And then another question, how do you keep an AI agent accurate to policies and processes? How much work does it take to update the agent?
Um, it's non-trivial to think about it through the lens of a framework, right? Um, and so this is why this is more a framework. So you need to think about this through the lens of guardrails, and your guardrails can be cutting through various different types of pitfalls that we typically run into, right? So while the intelligence itself can be all pervasive, you want your agents, your AI agents, to be grounded to very specific tasks. You don't want your AI agents to stream outside the boundary of that task, right? And the smaller the task and the special purpose that those agents are built for, the more success that you have in preventing hallucinations and preventing those agents from doing things that can be a liability to business, right? So the more specialized an AI agent is for, the better it is. So think small, think what you can establish as perimeter. And in terms of the guardrails itself, there are various types of guardrails that one has to think about. I was mentioning about specific things like not having PII leakage, right? Personally identifiable information that can be leaked out into non-encrypted channels. There are specific industries where that can lead to millions of dollars of fines in terms of a liability. So how do you prevent, PII leakage? That's a consideration for you. How do you prevent your AI agent in auto approving something it should not, right? So that's a guardrail that you should be thinking about. um, how do you prevent hate speech, right? If a consumer is engaging in a hateful manner, how do you encounter that? If somebody expresses a self-harm, how do you ensure that you are not liable? So various different types of guardrails that one has to worry about. And so this is a non-trivial exercise, I would say. So that's why I was telling that we should be thinking about these kinds of engagements or interactions through the lens of a framework. A human agent would obviously say, "Sir, I'm not authorized to answer this question," right? but that's what your AI agent needs to be able to say or do when it is asked to do something that's outside the walled garden that you want it to focus on.
Yeah, no, definitely good to emphasize that. I feel like the guardrails are often even more important than the framework itself. But another question just about that example, and maybe this is more in the wheelhouse of that health company. I'm not sure, but so someone was wondering about within the scheduling transportation element, is Usher connecting patients to respective services based on their insurance? This question is just saying, like, some health systems do that, some can work with community resources. So is that kind of possible or, yeah?
I want to make sure I answer I understand the question correctly before I answer. So, yes, if the question is about can it provide can it provide services that are either in other systems or other third parties, the answer is yes. It's not just limited to answering questions from a question bank. If there are services like I want to update my address information and that address has to go into another system, absolutely can do that. We see lots of requests for transportation rides. That was a demonstration that you saw, and that ride request usually goes into another third party community service. It doesn't have to be a system of record or a service that the plan or the insurance company is providing. It can be a third party service. So AI agents can absolutely engage, interact, and complete work alongside other third parties. So there's lots of protocols that we work with. A2A is a very emerging dominant protocol where one agent can engage with another agent. Even in the world of where intelligence is governed by one body and UI, the usability and the user interface itself is another one. A2UI is another emerging protocol, so you can standardize the experience itself from an experience layer. So different uh, levels of complexity that can be achieved here through the agency itself.
Thank you. Yeah, very helpful. I think we have one more. If there are other questions, feel free to still send them in the chat and we can get back to you offline. But the last question, I think this is referring to what you were talking about just before this, but how does an AI agent know when it can complete a task versus when it needs to escalate to a human?
That in itself is a construct that you set the agent up, right? When it comes to, I was giving you the example of you know clinical information. If the engagement requires a clinical explanation, you can set that up as an overarching guideline to the agent so that it doesn't make up an answer. Instead, it that entire engagement and conversation is routed to a human agent. And so those rules can obviously be set up, and you can also establish governing rules when when the AI agent is consistently not answering a question or being able to complete a task. You can take those types of interactions and then route it to a human agent, and those are again done over time. You launch your AI agent and understand how it's behaving. The observability, monitoring, and performance management of an AI agent is an absolute science, right? That's again both an art and a science, and this is why this is not you launch it and then you're off to the races and you don't worry about it. You have to calibrate these. There will be natural drift in terms of what these agents need to be tweaked to eventually get them to be optimal. And so this will be a journey.
Thank you so much. Perfect note to end on, I think. This will be a journey. But yeah, it's been so great to have you, Seema. Definitely for all who are still with us, just definitely check out the resources if you'd like to learn more about what we talked about today on the right side here. But yeah, thank you again. Great conversation. Great to hear from you.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thanks. Goodbye.